Welcome to the Art Lady channel. Today we're going to be making king penguins. And a king penguin is the second largest penguin in the world. I chose the king penguin because he has this beautiful bright coloring on him. He's got a little bit on the side of his neck here, and then on his beak and a little bit at the top of his tummy. So we give a little bit of beautiful warm color to our little sculpture. And he lives in Antarctica, which is at the bottom of the South Pole, the bottom of the world. And if you look, it's surrounded by icy waters. I'll show you what that looks like. All right, there's our icy waters, and the penguin would swim in the ocean here. And then if a killer whale happens to be coming along, because killer whales' favorite foods are these lovely little penguins, well, the penguin can escape by hopping up onto big icebergs, or if he's close to land, he'll hop back up on his land. So the icebergs are really helpful to the penguins. And so we're going to put this white clay dish will represent an iceberg. And then after we make our little penguin, we're going to be putting some of these glass beads at the bottom here and firing them. And I'll tell you how I do that at the very end of the video. But let's get started making our king penguin. Here's some examples first. Let me show you. And this is second grade. So I do these with second grade on up. That's age 7 on up. And these were made yesterday, so they're still, they haven't fully dried. They're what's called leather hard. And this is our example before it goes in the kiln. But of course, it has to be fully dry before we put this in the kiln. But go ahead. I'm going to go ahead and start. What we use is I cut my clay off in squares, and I'm using an 1.5 inch square. And I need 2 1.5 inch, actually, cubes of clay. So we take our cubes. I'm going to take my first cube, and I'm just going to leave it as a cube, and I'm just going to press it down. Now, if you have a rounded shape, if you pull them off in balls, that's fine. Just push down the rounded shape. You don't have to roll it first because we're forming our dish. And I'm just pressing down with the pad of my hand quickly. I want it to be about 1/4 inch thick. If you take the thickness of your pinky finger and measure it, because your fingers are going to be thinner than mine, it's about the thickness of your pinky finger. Don't get it any thinner than that, because what will happen is the dish could cause some weak spots. And when we melt the glass beads, it could come out and it would form cracks, and it could come out. The glass can come out of that. So you don't want to make it too thin, especially on your edges. Once we have it pushed down, and you want it to be at least, if I hold it this way, at least as wide as your hand, okay? Mine's on this side, it's oval shape, which is okay. Any shape is fine. On this side, it's a little bit wider, which is okay. Then I'm going to go ahead and just pinch up the edges. So I hold the clay, just like this, and I'm just bringing it up straight. I'll show you from this perspective. Just bring it up straight, go around the whole thing, just bring it up straight, and continue. Okay? I have a video on how to make little clay dishes. You can use that if you don't know this process. But this is your little dish, and you want to make sure it's all nice and evened. And now we're going to put this aside. Just make sure that you're totally sealed. And if any cracks like this, I just smooth out with my finger, because I don't want that glass leaking out on my kiln shelf. So there, and I have a free-form dish here. It's a great shape. This kind of mimics the curves and breaks of an actual iceberg. Now we're going to work on the penguin. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to break off clay for his arms and his little beak. So I'm going to break off a ball, and it's going to be a little bit larger than a grape. Now, if I pinch this up, I'll measure it for you so you can see. It's about an inch blob of clay right there. And that's all we'll need for the little extras we're going to add to our penguin. The remaining clay, all of this that's left over, besides the ball, I'm going to now roll into a barrel shape. And so I'm going to press this down first, because I have some big lopsided areas. And I'm going to bring it into a ball shape first, just by pressing in big edges, putting it in the center of my hand, and I'm going to roll a quick ball. Then I'm going to place it down, and I'm going to roll it back and forth to make a barrel. 1, 2, 3, 4, pressing gently. Now I don't want this barrel to be longer. See the length of my pinky finger? So you measure yours. You don't want the barrel to be longer than your pinky finger. He's going to be too skinny of a penguin. And he's as thick as 2 fingers. See that? The measurement of 2 fingers. Now once I have my nice barrel, I have this side that's a little flat, so I'll use that as my bottom. This one's a little bit rounder, so I'm just going to make it a little bit more round by pressing. And I want it to be kind of tapered at this end, meaning getting skinnier. But I don't want it to be a point, so I'm pushing in. And look, I'm spinning the clay as I'm pushing with my 2 fingers, just on this tip. And I'm rounding it a little bit. Now that'll give me a nice penguin shape. And I'm just going to place it straight on the, whoops, it tipped over. So I'm going to place it straight down and tap it 2 times. That way I get a nice flat bottom. If you've distorted anything here, just fix it. Now that penguin is ready to be decorated. So I'm going to start off by taking my little leftover clay and I'm pinching off a very tiny, measure it with your little pinky finger, because you want these to be smaller than the vegetable pea. I'm going to actually break that pea in half. That way I'll have 2, and these will be for the eyes. And I'm going to roll them in a ball. Now if you put a little bit of clay glue or slip first, this helps bond this. And I'm going to put a little bit of clay glue on here. We're using really wet clay today. And I'm going to place the eyes a little bit down on that head. See? And I'm going to give a slight push. I'll show you side view. They're a little bit too high up, so I'm going to bring them down a little bit more. I want to give them a little bit of forehead. There. Push them down. See, about there. So give a little forehead. Press in lightly. Press, press. Then I'm going to take I have a wood clay tool. You can also use a pencil. And think about where you want to put the eyes. If I poke the holes in close to each other, he's going to look cross-eyed. I can push him in straight on the center. I'll show you this little kid did straight on the center. Nope. I kind of like the cross-eyed look. Let's see if I've got a cross-eyed one. I don't have a cross-eyed one here. I'll show you. So I'm going to put it in, poke it in this way. So that means they're going to be both looking in. Make them a little comical. There. Doodaloo. So by pushing in, what this is doing is it's bonding this clay to the base, his body. Okay? And the clay slip helps it bond as well. That way this will not fall off as it dries. Sometimes things that dry, let me show you an example of this little guy. He was bumped and the wing was here. But if he's not sealed properly, as it's drying, this just falls. Oh, it goes this way. This will just fall, boop, right off. Because what happens is if you look, this piece is a lot drier than the body. And so it shrinks at different rates. If you're interested in more details about clay like that, I have a video on just clay basics, it's called, that you can look up. And it teaches you about rolling and how to roll balls and barrels, etc. But for now, what we're going to do is let's make the beak now. I'm going to pinch off a little piece of clay. And if you measure it, it's going to be a ball about the size of a real blueberry. So look, it's the width of my finger. And it's a 3-dimensional sphere, a ball. Uh-oh, there it goes. Let's pinch off another one. So I'm going to pinch it off. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to roll it into a very thin, not a thin, but a very fat barrel. So I just went up and back one time. It's important not to dry out the clay by rolling it too much. Now I'm going to press my finger down this side, roll up and back, and this is going to form a cone. So I've just rolled one side of the body to make a cone. Now I'm going to roll the other side up and back. And so I have a double cone for his nose. The reason I need a double cone is because we're going to be placing one end of the cone inside to help attach that and to make it permanent. So I'm going to take a wood tool, and under the eyes, I'm going to just drill in a hole. I'm going to take one end of this cone, and I'm just going to kind of lightly put some slip on it. Just kind of dip it into some watery clay, which is clay glue. And I'm just going to press it in, give it a little push, and that is good to go. If you want to seal some of these edges here, you can. Now I'm going to work on my little flippers. So I'm going to pinch off the size of a thumbnail. And this is a little sphere that matches your thumb. So it's going to be a little bit bigger than a blueberry, but it's going to be smaller than a grape. And this is probably a 1/2-inch cube. Yeah, little 1/2-inch balls, all you need. And we're going to need 2 of those. So we're pinching off 2 little 1/2-inch balls. And I'm just going to roll them quickly. Remember, roll the ball very fast, 2 seconds, 2 seconds, and then you won't dry it out. Now what I'm going to do is roll the barrel again, up and back, just quickly. Up and back. Oops. And then I'm going to roll just the ends of the barrel. Oop, we knocked them. To a slight point, slight point. I'm only rolling one end of the barrel this time. There. And if you see your little things, little flippers, these are going to be his arms, different sizes. At this time, you can trim them. One's a little bit longer. I'm just going to make them match. That's up to you. They don't have to match. Now I'm going to lightly press the bottoms. I'm not going to press the tops right now. They're going to be placed, let's get my little guy back, on the edges of the penguin, a little bit below, on the sides, one on each side. Oh, I forgot my little glue. Put a little clay glue on the top here. Now our clay's really wet, so we're skipping the score part. I'm going to just put this here. You actually don't even need the glue, but if you're, I'm doing it for kids at home if their clay's dry. So I'm pressing, pressing, okay, and so match the beak. Come on over to the side. Oop. I'm going to give him a little curl up his little wing, little flippers here. Check the back, press in. Okay, I want them to blend in. I don't want these to stick out. Now, on the back, I'm going to just blend this area in so that these don't fall off. Remember I showed you that student example with the little things I bumped this morning? Sometimes, as they're just drying, they fall apart. So when I touched it to pick it up, it fell apart. So you want to attach things really, really well. It seems like when I put things in the kiln, they get broken. And that's because they weren't made properly. Okay, so here we have our little penguin. And of course you can arrange the little flippers any way you want to. Now, either you can do this or your teacher, so you want to find out what she wants you to do. But I press a hole up the penguin, and I'm really careful not to go through the penguin. And after I do that, I'm rocking it to make it a little bit bigger. This is going to help speed the clay to dry in the middle. And it's also going to push out any air holes if there happen to be any, or help with the air holes. Then what I do is I take a needle tool, and under his arm, I'm coming from this hole right to the arm. Oops, I want to come right through. I want you to be able to see it. I come right through under his arm. These are vent holes. You can put the arm back a little bit so it doesn't show. You can even do some vent holes in the back if you want to, just real small. My tool is a little dirty, so I'm ending up having shabby vent holes. Vent holes. So you come up, let me make a nice one, there. So I put a few vent holes in, because what's going to happen is I'm going to be placing this now on top of the iceberg, just like this. And I'm going to let this fully dry. When this is 100% fully dry, and I let it dry at least a week, even more, because it depends on the thickness of these things. I don't rush this project when I'm firing this in a kiln. When it is completely dry, then I put in the glass beads, and the glass beads need to be all of the same company and the same manufacturer, unless you know the, I think it's called a CEO of glass. And it's basically the glass formula. So if I'm using these little tiny beads, I want to make sure they're all from the same company. I can do the different colors, but I want to make sure that I've bought them at the same time and they're from the same company. If I mix beads that I don't know about, then what's going to happen is if I put this in the kiln and these glass formulas don't match, I can get some different kinds of cracking that could cause chips and shards of glass for the kids, and I don't want that. So I'm real careful about the kinds of beads. But these beads can be simple beads that you buy at the dollar store. They don't have to be fancy and expensive, but you just have to remember to match the same kinds and brands. Once that's done, completely dry, we fill it with the glass beads. And remember, this is going to shrink and melt. So what you do is if you want it to be a really thick puddle, I make sure I have enough that's going to fill in even the back areas where I can't, in the back here where I can't reach it. So you can overflow it if you want a thick layer. If you want just a very thin layer, you could do something like that. Okay, that's about just enough. And this has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 little beads. And then what I do is I do a bisque fire. And so that's an 04. I 04 fire this, and then we don't fire it again. At the 04 firing, and now this is leather hard clay that's dry, and the glass beads at the same firing. The bisque fire, after it's done, it comes out just like this, and then the kids paint it and we take it home. And that's how I do the little king penguin. And if you have any questions, just leave them in a comment, and I'll have a link to the lesson plan at the bottom as well. Enjoy your penguins.